Hey, what is up? Welcome to this episode of the Entrepreneur to Entrepreneur podcast. As always, I'm your host, Brian Lofermento, and I am so excited to talk to today's guest and fellow entrepreneur because as soon as I started researching him, I found an interview years ago that he did where he started right off the bat saying, I am an entrepreneur who's about a mile wide and about a quarter inch deep. And you're going to see in his bio that this is someone who's incredibly accomplished across so many different areas of business. And I love his attitude towards saving businesses and helping them to turn around because this is someone who really loves getting into the nitty-gritty of what makes businesses work. So let me introduce you to today's guest. His name is Tra Pippin. Tra is an entrepreneur and turnaround specialist that has been in business for over 35 years. He has turned around over 50 companies during his career in over 19 industries. So if you want to talk business fundamentals, it doesn't matter what industry you're in. Tra has a really incredible understanding across the board. He's an attorney. He also has his MBA. He has been CEO of 4 companies that each have over $100 million in revenue. There is so much goodness that we're going to learn from Tra today. So I'm not going to say anything else. Let's dive straight into my interview with Tra Pippin. All right, Tra, I am so very excited that you're here with us today. First things first, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Brian. I appreciate having the opportunity to tell you my story.
Heck yes. Well, you heard. I love that mile wide, quarter inch deep analogy that you've previously used, but I'm excited to hear firsthand. Take us beyond the bio. Who's Tra? How did you start doing all these cool things across so many industries?
Well, I started early. When I was 5 years old, I loved chocolate. I loved candy. I loved reading comic books. I had no way to buy that stuff, so I lived right down the street from a 7-Eleven, and I did have a radio flyer wagon. So every Saturday morning, I would go around to the neighborhood. I'd collect pop bottles, and the neighborhood cleaners would give me a penny a clothes hanger for every one I brought in. So I was able to buy chocolate bars, candy to my endless amounts. And the manager at the 7-Eleven, Ray, would occasionally pay me 25 cents to clean up the trash along the outside. So it was good. But I've been an entrepreneur my whole life. I painted houses and apartments during college and law school. So I've been entrepreneurially inclined my whole life. And I guess my motto is I can fix any fixable company out there. I don't really care what industry it's in, and I think I've kind of proved that. Like you said earlier, I've been involved with well over 50 companies in probably now 20 different industries, from everything from healthcare to heavy-duty trucks and equipment to home health to making bathtubs, a lot of different industries, the printing industry, lots and lots of different industries. And the one thing that I found is that as I go into any company that needs to be fixed, or if I just wanted to buy it, the one comment I hear constantly from the employees is, Tra, our company's different. You'll never be able to figure it out. We're different. You don't know anything about our industry. And my response to that is always, I know nothing about your industry and I can prove it. But with your help, we can fix it. So anyway, that's kind of a little bit of background on me.
Yeah, I love that overview, Tra. You called out, it's one line of questioning that I want to get into with you today because obviously we have listeners in over 150 countries and probably 1,500 different industries and business models. And that's the thing that I always hear from listeners is, oh, my business is different. I feel like everyone convinces themselves that their ailments, whether it's medical, whether it's business, whether it's anything, we all convince ourselves that we are so very unique that nobody else on planet Earth can make sense of it. Trey, start making sense of it for us, because clearly you have found the real fundamentals. That the beautiful thing about fundamentals is a lot of them are somewhat universal, and I'd love to hear your perspective on that, because it's super valuable having been in as many trenches as you have been.
There's a lot of universal stuff, and in my business, what I found is that even though I feel like I'm pretty qualified from a financial standpoint, I've got an MBA, I've done work as a CFO before, but the one thing that I think separates me from most other, certainly turnaround guys and a lot of other like private equity companies, is that I focus less on the financial end of it than I do the people end of it. And I've kind of come up with a formula. It's called the 6 Ps, and I derived this from teaching marketing at University of Oklahoma for 8 years. I taught entrepreneurship at Oklahoma City University for 8 years. So I feel like I'm kind of qualified academically to understand this philosophy. But certainly in a turnaround, as you go into it, one of the key things financially is you use what's called a 13-week rolling forecast. And the 13-week rolling forecast basically is just how much blood do we have in the company? What's the cash flow? Will the cash flow survive? Will the company survive until we get to cash flow positive? And once we assume that will work, or we apply the necessary capital to get to that point, I focus almost exclusively on the 6 Ps. And for those of you that know marketing, the four Ps of it are product, price, place, and promotion. So I'll take a good look at the product or service they're selling, and this is the universal end of it. Are they selling something different that makes sense? Are they making a widget that everybody else makes and they have no difference at all? Price, are they too low where they couldn't make a profit? Or are they too high where they've priced themselves out of the market? The place kind of speaks for itself. And then promotion, do they have anything other than word of mouth? Have they been doing ads on TV? Nowadays it's social media. And again, everybody says social media, it can be overdone tremendously. Facebook, some of the other, LinkedIn has some interesting opportunities, Instagram. But you take a look at the past marketing and sales promotions that they've taken on. Are they effective? Are they not effective? Can they be improved? We've got groups that, as an example, if it's just a sale, if you've got a good product, you got a good price, you can't get your word out, there are people out there that can bring you leads, and as long as you can close on those leads, you can get sales. And again, sometimes sales will float all boats, sometimes it won't. If the margins are not there, you may have to adjust that. But the other one, the other 2 Ps, that's the first 4 Ps, is people is the next one. And I will focus on I will interview almost every person unless it's a very large company. Anybody with any kind of responsibility, I will have a sit down 10, 15 minute conversation with them and find out if we have any people that meet the 6th P, which is passion. In order for this thing to really work, what I found is that I'm able to find passionate people, and almost every company has several passionate people. In the turnaround industry, most, I'd say 80, maybe 90% of the problems that I see in going into companies is management failings for a variety of reasons. But what I've also found is that the support staff, the company has maintained itself through the passion of the certain people. Maybe you've got an operations manager, maybe you've got a floor manager, maybe you've got a sales manager that has passion. If you've got a great person with passion, I call that somebody that's P squared. And I look for that. Those are hidden gems. If you can find a company that maybe, say, has 100 companies and has 3 or 4 P squared people, it is a recipe for instant success.
Yeah, I love that, Trey. Especially with that formula in mind, it really makes me question. I mean, obviously, part of your claim to fame is you can fix any company that's fixable. Hearing these 6 Ps in action and how deliberately you look at each, it lends the bigger question, which I guess is part philosophical, part strategic. Is every company fixable, or are there times when you walk in and you assess and you say, no, this needs to be blown up, we need to start from scratch, or we need to completely reshape the puzzle itself?
No, every company is not fixable. If they don't pass the 4 Ps out of the 6 Ps, maybe they're making a product that is no longer needed in the industry. They're making floppy disks for today's market. That doesn't work anymore. You find companies like RCA as an example. Years ago, Curtis Mathis was another company that made the big CRT televisions. Those companies don't exist anymore. They don't make a product that makes any sense. Service, there are a lot of examples there too, but there are a lot of companies that don't make sense to fix. And I will go in. Typically, I'm engaged with the company by a lending institution, somebody that has a note, maybe an asset-based lender, maybe it's a bank, whatever. But they will engage us to go in and assess the situation, and then tell them whether or not we need to shut it down. And it really may not be fixable. Maybe they don't have any good people, which is possible. What I find in a lot of cases is we found one company up in Redmond, Washington a few years ago that they had 9 family members on the payroll. I never met them. I met the CEO. The rest were sisters, brothers, cousins, uncles. They had, in addition to that, 20 different vehicles that were on the payroll. They had 2 houses, 1 yacht. They all needed to go. That company was not fixable. They were too far gone. They had overtaken draws. It was not a fixable company. Does that address that question?
Yeah, for sure. I guess it leads to an even bigger question, because a lot of listeners will be wondering, every business owner runs into challenges at so many different parts of our growth journeys. And I guess my question with my listener hat on is, how do we know in our businesses, if we're talking about fixable, how much of your work, Trey, is about revolution versus just kind of the evolution of, hey, this is what's going right, versus, I think it's right there in the name of your industry, the turnaround industry, for example. Are we talking about doing a complete 180, or typically when you walk in, are there some small tweaks and refinements? I'm super curious about how big are these shifts to turn a company around?
A lot of it is, how big am I taking over a battleship, or am I taking over a rowboat? But big companies are obviously slower and harder to turn around than smaller companies. And again, it's the nature of the ailment. We had a company here in Oklahoma City that they had created a phenomenal marketing campaign. They were making furniture and they called it the urban farmhouse. And by the time that I got there, again, it was a very similar situation. Kids were on the payroll. I mean, you had Porsches, you had G-Wagons, you had all kinds of stuff that had to be gotten rid of. And when you have situations like that, it makes it very much more difficult. But most of the time, I'm making some kind of radical change to the company, the structure, whatever, within 72 hours. It's when I normally go into a company, I am 100% committed, and I will probably work the first 3 days, 15 to 18 hours a day to assess the situation. And if I still have questions about what the problem is with the company, I will then sit down, and it's kind of a secret sauce that I do. I will actually go through the bank statements for the last year and the credit card statements, and that's where I find a lot of issues with the company. And that's a very time-consuming, tedious, boring job to do that, but it needs to be done if I can't immediately just assess the situation.
Yeah. How much has AI changed that? Because you're right, there's so many moving parts of a business and so much that you're figuring out. I would imagine, Trey, I would love to sit next to you for a week and kind of go into one of these businesses and just dump into AI to get a different perspective. But obviously, your perspective is incredibly valuable because you bring a lot of experience across so many different businesses. So you see links and you see patterns that somebody might not, especially if they've lived inside of that specific business or that specific industry. So I'm super curious how much of this is your perspective and vantage point from experience, and if at all AI is helping you in trying to dissect what's actually going on.
The AI in my case stands for ancient individual. I have not employed any AI. I mean, I know how to use Chat GPT and all that, but I don't use AI at this point in my analysis of companies. So it's just the old ancient individual here that goes in and works the company as well as I can.
Trey, I'm going to steal that. I love that. Ancient individual, because the truth is, it's taken ancient individuals in order to build and train these AI models. So we always have to remember about that underlying wisdom that's powering so much of them. But it does want me to ask you, because you and I can obviously see each other right now. Most listeners can't see us, but I have spotted that big golf bag behind you. And it's clear to me that you are an avid golfer. And obviously, you have a varied background as well. You're not just a business person. You are also an attorney. You have all these different vantage points. How much do your outside of business interests shape the way that you see businesses? I'm sure that there are patterns that you pick up, whether it's on the golf course or whether it's in a legal debate, that make you realize this applies to business and good business as well.
The golf bag. I played competitive squash for 35 years also, and was, from an amateur standpoint, pretty accomplished. But golf, because of my golfing days, I just had this morning, I had an injection in my back, steroid injection, so that I could continue playing golf. But my competitive nature makes me want to fix any and every company that I run into. It's these outside interests. I'm in my study in my house right now, and I love, another one of my passions is I love reading. And one of the things that I would recommend to any young entrepreneur is that he read, be it through Audible, be it through the old-fashioned book basis, but read a lot. I mean, you go back to Good to Great days, you go back to Peters, and there's a lot of wisdom in some of these old books. Some of the new ones, I just attended an AI seminar last week that was great as far as giving the perspective, the overview, There's obviously a lot in AI. In the Wall Street Journal, there's 3, 4, 5 articles every day on AI in the Wall Street Journal. You can't miss it. But as far as these outside activities, they do influence. I have probably 4 or 5 of the people that I play golf with are bankers. So my crowd is bankers. There are also a lot of physicians. So I network with that group, and they all know what I do. So it's been a big factor in what I do.
Yeah, Trey, keeping on that theme of the ancient individual, there are things that you've seen that just a lot of business owners may not have. And I really want to get into this conversation with you because it is such an uncertain time. A lot of people have macroeconomic, microeconomic questions. There's uncertainty in the markets in so many different ways. You've obviously been at this for quite some time. I'm curious how much those external trends, the macroeconomic conditions, how much they play into your decision making, your investment decisions, the way that you view businesses' opportunities in their respective marketplaces. How much do you react to those conditions?
Well, my serendipitous entry in the turnaround industry happened years ago because of an external event. The first company that I bought was a company here in Oklahoma City called Perfection Equipment Company. They are a great company. They were a great company. I had the opportunity to buy this thing. They were the largest truck parts and equipment distributor in Oklahoma for sure, and maybe even Southwest individually. And normally, like I said, the management causes the downfall of 90% of these companies. In the case of Perfection Equipment Company, it was a company doing roughly $2.5 million a month in revenue. This is in 1982. A lot of you will not remember the next event, but we wrote a letter of intent to buy this company. And during the letter of intent, right after we signed it, there was a bank in one of the shopping centers here that closed. It was called Penn Square Bank. And I think, Brian, you probably want to remember this one, but we thought, when we knew that Penn Square Bank lent a lot of money to the oil and gas industry. Well, nobody had any idea how impactful that closing was going to be. And it absolutely cratered the oil and gas industry. And Perfection Equipment Company at that time was a large truck rigger. I think the day we closed, we had a $10-12 million backlog with Halliburton Company. Schlumberger had maybe half of that. Dowell, the Western Company, which is no longer around, but a lot of these companies had, if I remember right, about $30 million in backlog. Well, our business, 12 months from the day we closed in August 1982 until August of 1983, our sales went from $2.5 million down to $300,000 a month. And that was one of the few times that I can see that external events close things. But what got me into the industry was trying to determine. I mean, it was a great company, great people. We had a lot of P squared people in that. All the 6 P's were met, and then plus you have all the P squared people. So there was no reason to close that company. So I got in my truck or my car or whatever it was at the time, and I visited Dowell, Schlumberger, Halliburton. And I got to get a shout out to Halliburton. Halliburton was a wonderful company to work with. They could have shut us down, every one of the companies, after they had already sent in their letter saying that they wanted to stop the orders. They didn't want to accept the orders in the future. I went to every one of them and asked them if they would reconsider. I said, if you don't, we're going to be out of business. And I explained, I got down on my hands and knees and begged them, and whatever I did, every one of them, without exception, said they would reinstate those purchase orders, which saved our company. And on top of that, we went from 130 employees down to 30 employees. We were picking people that had been there 17 years versus people that had only been there like 11 years. But we had a great company, great products, everything. The company needed to be saved, but that's one of the few times that I can think of that external events really happen that can cause a company to fail. Natural disasters. I had another one. We were working with a printing company down in Houston, and a tornado hit our building while I was in it, and we had several large printing presses. And when I went up front to check on everybody to see if everybody was okay, I was in the back. We had water pouring in through the roof, and printing presses and water don't mix very well. So those kind of things, we ended up shutting that thing down. But those are one of the few times that I can say that external events do impact what happens.
Yeah.
And there are a lot of them.
Even in those stories, Trey, I think it shows how much you viewed as, I can still go after and try to get these purchase orders through. And that shows how much you're able to do there. You may not be able to combat those tornadoes, unfortunately, but I think it shows how much, work ethic, drive, ambition, negotiating, all of those things still play into very unforeseen and sometimes uncontrollable events. So I appreciate those insights. And what I really appreciate as a podcast host is that these are real stories from your experiences. And I think that that's so valuable, and obviously it plays into how you operate. But Trey, it also means I have no idea how you're going to answer this last question, because it's super broad and I ask it at the end of every session. And that is, what's your number one piece of advice for listeners? Knowing that we're being listened to not only by entrepreneurs, but by both entrepreneurs and entrepreneurs at all different stages of their own growth journeys, what's that one piece of advice that you want to leave them with today?
And I've thought about this a little bit, but that have a positive attitude, they can do it. I mean, if I can do it, and again, I'm serious about this, I can fix any fixable company out there. And is it because I have it at 900 IQ? Absolutely not. But I've stuck with my 6P philosophy all this time, and anybody out there can do it. It does help. I don't think everybody is an entrepreneur, but I do think that anybody can be trained to successfully run a company.
Yeah, Trey, it really reminds me of that Albert Einstein quote of, if you want to impress somebody, make it complicated. If you want to help somebody, make it simple. And a lot of people, especially hearing your bio and hearing your experiences, probably tune into today's episode and think, Trey's going to give me some secrets about business. There's going to be some secrets that everybody's always withheld from me. But what I'm really hearing are those simple fundamentals that you so deliberately pay attention to and that you utilize as growth assets inside all of the companies that you've worked with, which those are in abundance. So huge kudos to you. I'm super grateful for you sharing your knowledge with us. But I also know that listeners are going to be just excited as I was to go deeper into the world of Tra Pippin, all the great things that you've done. A quick Google search, for example, returns so many of the companies that you've been a part of, some interviews that you've done, a lot of goodness. So drop those links on us. For listeners who want to find more about you, your turnaround work, all the great stuff that you're up to, where should listeners go from here?
Thank you, Brian. I appreciate you having me on. And I don't have any of those links right now, but I will certainly put those up.
Yes, and listeners, you already know what that means. That means we're going to be dropping them down below in the show notes. We're going to be linking to Trey's personal LinkedIn, so don't be shy. If you are part of, whether it's yours or you're inside of a company that is looking to be turned around and rescued, you've heard Trey's brilliance here on the air today. So Trey, on behalf of myself and all the listeners worldwide, thanks so much for coming on the show today.
Thank you. I appreciate you having me. It was fun.